Welcome to this week's Wired Word with Nuevo United Methodist Church. This is a current event Bible study that we use to kind of take and it's done out by the Wired Word where they take two current events and then they put a biblical twist to it. And then we answer questions as to how we are going to handle it as a congregation or as Christians in today's world. Today's story we're covering is the 100th anniversary of amendments giving women the right to vote. We thought this was a good one since most of the time we usually have just the ladies here joining us for Wired Word. So we decided to cover this one today, giving the women the right to vote, which was a great achievement for our country. It was a big obstacle to get over in those days. A century ago, on August 26, 1920, the U.S. Secretary of State proclaimed that the 19th Amendment to the Constitution had been ratified. The words, "the right of citizens of the United States to vote shall not be denied or abridged on an account of sex," were added to the U.S. Constitution, though some hurdles, including racism, still remain and still do in places. Legally, the passage of this amendment ended a long struggle for a woman's suffrage in the United States, a movement that sought to give women the ability to vote and run for office. Today, Senator Kamala Harris is running for vice president on the Democratic ticket after similar attempts by Governor Sarah Palin and Republican Geraldine Ferraro. This week, Democrat. This week, President Trump announced a how do you pronounce that? Posthumous? Posthumous, okay, thank you. Posthumous pardon to celebrate suffragists.
Suffragette.
Now, somebody else should read this, maybe. Man. Suffragette Susan B. Anthony, convicted of voting in 1872 to mark this anniversary. In the mid-1800s, women in several countries, including the U.S. and Britain, formed organizations to fight for suffrage. Among the leaders were Millicent Fawcett in Britain and Carrie Chapman in the United States. Women were granted unrestricted voting rights by Wyoming Territory in 1869, followed by Utah Territory in 1870. The first countries to grant national level voting rights to women were New Zealand in 1893 and Australia in 1902. Other countries followed soon after, with limited voting rights granted to women in Sweden, Britain, Finland, and some U.S. states. At the start of World War I, many suffrage organizations shifted their focus to supporting the war effort. But when men went to fight in the war, women took on many roles that had been traditionally held by men, and this caused a shift in thinking about the capabilities of women. Such changes gave additional momentum to the suffrage movement. In November 1918, the British Parliament passed the Eligibility of Women Act, allowing women to be elected to Parliament. In the United States, the suffrage movement began at the Seneca Falls Convention of 1848, the first women's rights convention in the world. Organized by abolitionists Lucretia Mott and Elizabeth Cady Stanton, the convention demanded the recognition of women as equal members of society. Stanton wrote a document that included 11 resolutions, with the ninth calling for women's suffrage, which Mott feared would be contentious. Stanton remained adamant, however, and said, "To have drunkards, idiots, horse-racing, rum-selling rowdies, ignorant foreigners, and silly boys fully recognized, while we ourselves are thrust out from all the rights that belong to citizens, is too grossly insulting to the longer quietly submitted to." Think of that. The right is ours. We must have it. Finally, all 11 resolutions were passed with help from the vocal support of Frederick Douglass, the ex-slave and abolitionist editor of the North Star. Right is of no sex, he argued. Women is justly entitled to all we claim for men. After the abolition, thank you. After the abolition of slavery, Several women's suffrage associations emerged, and in the 1880s, they merged into one group. Stanton became president of the National American Women's Suffrage Association, with Susan B. Anthony serving as vice president. The NAWSA became a national parent organization to hundreds of local groups that campaigned for the rights to vote. In the early 20th century, and the NAWSA began to recruit celebrities to support the cause, along with organizing parades and rallies. Their members wore white uniforms and carried banners calling for women's suffrage. In 1914, a more radical organization was formed. The Congressional Union, man, I'm having trouble today. The Congressional Union later renamed the National Women's Party. At the beginning of World War I, the NWP criticized the government for supporting democracy abroad while denying women the right to vote at home. Members of this group picketed and held demonstrations in front of the White House. And in June of 1917, NWP members were arrested on the charge of obstructing traffic, but they were not deterred. They continued their efforts in the face of arrests, jail time, hunger strikes, and forced feedings. In November of 1917, 33 suffragettes from the NWP were arrested for picketing outside the White House, taken to the Occoquan workhouse in Virginia. They were clubbed, beaten, and tortured by guards in what came to be known as the Night of Terror. Male guards restrained the party's co-founder, Lucy Burns, tying her hands to the bars above her cell and forcing her to stand all night. Dorothy Day, who went on to establish the Catholic worker houses, was slammed over the back of an iron bench. Dora Lewis was thrown into a dark cell and was knocked out when her head hit an iron bed. Her cellmate, Alice Kosu, suffered a heart attack and received no medical care until the next day. As terrifying as the night was, it led to greater public support for the suffrage movement. At the same time, NAWSA continued its work under the leadership of Carrie Chapman Catt, president from 1915 to 1920. Chapman Catt distanced herself and NAWSA from the NWP, calling their behavior unladylike. In 1916, she set up a publicity bureau in Washington, D.C. to exert face-to-face pressure on members of Congress. Finally, 72 years after the Seneca Falls Convention, the 19th Amendment was ratified and women were given the right to vote. Applying the news story. Reflect on the struggles and successes of the women's suffrage movement as you think about the rights and roles of women in the church, the community, and the nation and the world. Big question number one. Why do you think it took the suffrage movement 72 years to gain the right for women to vote? What resistance have women faced in the past, and what about today?
I think because men were raised to think that women could be, barefoot and pregnant.
Yeah. Yeah, you still hear that quite often, people making comments that women belong in, you still see it in several countries where women belong in the house, cleaning and cooking and stuff of that nature.
And there's a lot of men that still feel that way. But not so many can get away with it anymore.
No, women are starting to step out. Like I said, a lot more doing. Like I said, we've had several women who have ran for even presidency. Hillary Clinton ran for presidency in the last election, and we have several women who have been, going for vice president. And, I'm sure that time is coming soon. But we're starting to see a lot more. And I being a pastor, I know I've heard a lot from a lot of different people, and it really shocks me that a lot from women about female pastors and how there's a struggle with people being okay with a female pastor.
Yeah.
And to me, I find that kind of shocking because God works through and speaks through all of us, and we can even look back to the Bible, and I can show you many times where Jesus sent women out to spread his message.
Right.
But it's a role thing.
It's a role.
It is, sure, because you're used to seeing men
Yeah.
as pastors.
Yep.
And they have for umpteen years. Yeah,
Christian
Now
Town Church
it's-
still doesn't allow women pastors.
There are several churches that are still struggling with that
I
concept.
think
yeah,
Christian
allowing
Town
female
Church is one of them.
yeah.
Yeah, there's a few of them that do it. But like I said, I can look at the Bible and I can see where, like I said, Jesus sends the woman at the well. Jesus sent her back to the town to spread his
Preach,
message,
yeah.
to bring the people out.
Mhm.
I mean, so if Jesus is okay with sending women to spread his message, why aren't we?
Yeah.
So,
Well, back in those days, do you think women were considered very weak and not strong enough to
yeah.
have a good brain and good ideas?
Well, and I mean, it's still, as of today, I'm not saying that all women are weaker than all men, because there are a lot of women out there that I would not go.
Right.
I remember in my past, there was, in high school, we went to we always had those dirt road parties, where you got 2-track parties, and we were out at one, and there was, all of a sudden the cop showed up, and I seen this girl, she picked up 2 full kegs and went booking through the woods carrying 2 full kegs. I would have never been able to carry 2 full kegs. I'm like, I'm with her, not because she has the beer, but she can carry 2 full kegs. So, but yes, men were looked at as the warriors, as the brawn and the strength, and they were able to go out and fight, and they had to have a lot of tactical skills and training and thought process and how to defeat your enemies. And so therefore they just looked at as men as being, the leaders of the communities, because they had to fight the battles and they better understood battles and were smarter at doing it apparently. Back then. Now we even have women in the military now. They're out on the battlegrounds. I remember back in, I think even during Desert Storm is about the time back in the early 90s, 91 I think it was, when women were allowed to start carrying weapons. I think it was about that time that I started hearing the talk that women were allowed to carry weapons, but they weren't allowed to be on the front lines.
Yeah, maybe as nurses.
Yeah, so they were starting to let women into those roles, those combat roles, but it's still, even as late as 1991, we were still struggling.
And what would they have done without the nurses on the front line?
Yeah. Well, now you're seeing women in most of our combat roles. Now.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
20 years later, 30 years later, we're seeing
And
women in all kinds of combat
They
roles.
pilot jets.
Yeah, they're flying jets. They're they're in full combat mode. So they said they're carrying weapons on the front line, and they're out and facing fire battles and everything else. So, but like I said, as early as 30 years ago, we were having that. So it was just about that time they were allowing women to carry weapons on the battlefield, but not allowing them to the front lines of the
Front line,
battlefield. If I
yeah.
remember right. So we've come a long way. We've still got a long way to go. There's still a lot of things
True.
that people have a misconception about women, what they can and can't do. So. Number 2, right is of no sex, argued ex-slave and abolitionist Frederick Douglass. Women is justly entitled to all we claim for men. Just as discussed this. I think we kind of did there, didn't we?
Yeah.
Women are proving day in and day out that they are just as capable.
They can do whatever a man does.
Yeah. Not what, yeah, exactly. I am struggling with the whole fact, I mean, I guess I'm kind of careful with this because right now we're starting to see where there's in high school sports, because of the whole transgender issue going on. They're allowing boys to participate in girl events. And unfortunately, when you look at it and break it down, especially at that level, boys are superior when it comes to speed and strength and stuff of that nature. So they are going to be running faster and be able to outperform the girls in those areas, and thus taking away from a lot of those girls their rights to.
And so that's not right either.
Exactly. So as I said, we got to be careful of where we go with this, because we don't want boys stepping into the girls' range and taking over.
Right.
Or, I mean, if a girl, to me, I'm okay if a girl wants to step up into a boys' sport and she can hang and provide and produce and do well, then by all means let her. But yet, letting a boy step into a girls' event, where, like I said, especially in high school, boys happen to their bodies mature a lot faster when it comes to physical strength and agility and stuff of that nature than girls do. It takes them a lot more to reach that height at that age. We're stepping into an area where we're taking away from these young girls their achievements that they could possibly be setting. Number 3, the Night of Terror in 1917 led to greater public support for the suffrage movement. When have you seen great evil turned into good? How does this connect to the cross of Christ?
Good question.
Good question.
I can't narrow it down to one. You know, I say all the time, I don't like that saying, everything happens for a reason, because we're implying that God does all good
Right.
and bad. So I argue with that and say, no, God doesn't do all good and bad. He allows bad. He does do that, as we learned from Job.
And that's our human nature,
Exactly, because a lot of times humans make stupid choices
right? They do.
Right.
that, that create bad situations. And we, of course, have to live with the consequences of that when we do that. Sometimes others are wrapped up into it.
Yeah.
And I believe, like I said, because we've learned from Job that God does allow Satan to try to do things to people, to try to pull them off God's path and away from worshiping or from honoring God in everything they do. So I like I always say all the time, not everything happens for a reason, but God gives reason to everything.
Everything that happens.
I mean, even right now, I can tell you right now with what's going on with this pandemic, it was bad that we had to shut we even shut all of our churches down across the country. And there's still a lot of churches who have not yet opened. They have not opened to any face-to-face conversations or stuff yet. But like we've talked about over and over, we keep seeing at the end of the week, we have almost 300 views on our websites, on our Facebook page or our YouTube page, watching our Sunday messages.
Is it because a lot of the other churches aren't doing their online?
Well, they're doing online ones, but they're not doing face to face. So that's what a lot of them are just depending on the online to reach out.
Okay, I understand.
But it is giving other people, because I know many people that I talk to that say that they watch their church service on Sunday morning, and then they usually watch mine sometime during the week.
Oh, okay, well,
So-
Mr. Watson.
So they want, I'm sorry, ours. They watch ours. These are friends of mine.
Yeah.
They're like going, well, I go to my church on Sunday morning, but I'll come back and I'll watch yours like on Wednesday.
The Grace Bible Church has their service right after ours, because they start later than we do. And I just wonder how many more people are watching theirs too.
Yeah.
The rest of my family.
I've been
goes
hearing
there.
that just about every church that I'm going to, their attendance online has jumped up into the hundreds and 200s, 300 range,
Yeah.
depending on the size of the churches.
I
or
just
the-
hope we get people back in the building.
Yeah, it's going to be great when we do. But like I said, there's people out there with some fears and concerns, and they have some, and they're just to be that way, to feel that
Right.
way. But at some point, we do have to kind of take into consideration whether we put our faith in God over our faith in man, our fear in man, and kind of go from there. But all we can do is, like I said, all we can do is continue to be here, provide what we can, show them so that way they can still feel like they're part of the church as when we're doing our online messages.
Right.
And then, like I said, for when they do return, just be here for them and accept them back and with open arms and love and grace. That's all we can do. And we can't force them to come back.
No,
All we can do is let them know that we're here for them when they do feel comfortable and ready to come back.
Right.
All right, number 4. What roles and rights do women have in your church community? In Luke 10:39, Mary takes a place as a disciple at the feet of Jesus without asking for permission, just as women claim the right to vote. And in John 11:27, Martha is one of the first to call Jesus Messiah. Where do you see changing roles for women in the church, if any? So the first one, what roles and rights do women have in your church?
Whatever they want to do.
I think just
Yeah.
about everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so
Yeah.
too. Yeah.
We do have a large, we have of course, and like in most churches, we have a larger number of women than we do men in our church. So of course the women tend to step up and take over most of the roles.
Yeah.
So they fill quite a bit of it.
How
You know,
many female pastors are in the area?
I think only two that I know. Pastor BJ at Episcopal and St. Mark's Episcopal, and Pastor Chelsea at Faith of God. I believe are the only two in the city limits of New England.
That's pretty good.
Yeah. Out of 14 churches, they cover
Yeah.
two of those. So yeah.
Isn't there the female pastor at the United Methodist Church in Fremont? Is she still there?
She's not there, but they do have another church that pastor that is taking over, and she's also it's a female as well. So
Okay,
they do
at the
have-
Fremont Church?
Fremont, yeah,
Okay.
Fremont United Methodist.
Okay.
She's covering actually they've combined the Fremont United Methodist with the Hesperia, so it's
Oh, okay.
I keep hearing a slight buzz comes up and down. I'm not getting close to their mic. Yeah, we actually have a pretty large group of female pastors for the United Methodist Church in the Michigan Conference.
Yeah.
We have a lot of female pastors in our conference in
Well,
Michigan.
we had 3 here in a row,
Yeah, you guys have had them, for what, I think it was,
15
I
years.
think it was 15 years.
Yeah.
And you guys had a female pastor here, so yeah, like I said, and I'm sorry, I know a lot of women who are much better speakers than I am, so.
You do just fine.
Well, thank you, you're being nice.
No, you do just fine.
But, so
Well,
like
your
I said,
computer's working.
yeah. Yeah, as long as my thing's working. But you know what I said? Satan must have been working that day because I went downstairs. I'm like, okay, is my battery dead? I clicked it on and started working. I was like, are you kidding me? But anyways, but yeah, so like I said, we're seeing we do have a big shift of women. I mean, we have many DSs, district superintendents we have several bishops across the country that are women. So the women in the United Methodist Church have been climbing for years.
Yeah.
I think we were one of the early first ones to allow women as pastors. So and they've been climbing ever since. So
Yeah, we had a female superintendent before Erwin Bard. One now, isn't it
Bishop,
Bishop?
yeah, Bishop Cersei.
And
Yeah, we
isn't
have
Lori
female
Heller a bishop now?
bishop. Lori Heller's a bishop out in Iowa. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so yeah, like I said, they're all over. I know we got several female bishops. So yeah, they've been climbing the United Methodist Church for years. And I do know of a couple of churches that are they're kind of going through those discussions about whether or not to allow females to be pastors. And I think they're starting to, the ones that have been really tight at not letting it go are now starting to have conversations.
Depending on how many are on the council.
What's that?
Depending on how many of them on their council.
True, yeah. It depends on how many are climbing through the council ranks and getting on the boards.
Yeah. Work your way up.
What's the second part of this? Where do you see changing roles for women in the church, if anywhere?
I think we just covered that.
Yeah, we kind of covered that when we were talking in the United Methodist Church. They've been doing it for quite a while, and they're continuing
Yeah.
to be major leaders in our church.
How about the Baptist church? Do they allow?
The Baptist Church, I don't
think
know.
they do.
But the thing is with the Baptist Church too, though, the Baptist Church has many different groups.
Okay.
It's not all like the United Methodist Church is one big organization. The Baptist Church is split up into many different little organizations. So
Okay.
they each have their own, sort of like the Lutheran. They have like 3 different groups for the Lutheran that you fall in, and each one has their own set of rules and disciplines. So it's, and I know the Baptists have many. There's many different styles of Baptists. So I'm not sure if any of them are open to female pastors yet or not. Or, I don't know. Maybe if anybody's out there listening, they can write in and tell us. All right, number 5. Where do women still face inequality in the United States, around the world, and what can be done? Where have women been privileged over men in the United States? First one, where do women still face inequality in the United States?
Probably in the business world.
The business world?
A lot, yeah.
Well, like Deb said, she's not got her mic on today. She's just hollering out for us to hear.
Okay.
Some religions, we're seeing it. We're seeing the inequality in some religions, as we were just discussing. The business world, depending on the business, the style of business,
That's
I'm sure,
right.
because you got a lot of female CEOs when it comes to like fashion stuff or cosmetics. You're seeing magazines. You're seeing women climbing those roles, but in more of like your automotive, you don't know. I don't know if I know of
Not
any
too many
women
in
in the
automotive,
automotive
no.
industry or that nature. If you have women in those roles.
I think in your grocery stores and stuff too, I think most of the people are, the leaders are men.
They're what?
Like managers and stuff like
Oh,
that in
in
grocery
grocery
stores
stores
and
and
stuff like
such?
that, yeah. Don't see too many females.
Yeah.
But you see more and more women as news reporters. things
Yeah,
like
that's
that.
true.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, and a lot of them in the investigative news reporting. Because a lot of that, took the men into very dangerous areas, so they always just sent the men instead of
Right.
But now you're starting to see women, especially since
Yeah.
all the uprising that we had in the Middle East, all the unseen tensions going on there. We've seen a lot of women reporters,
Yeah. And law enforcement too.
law enforcement. We're seeing tons of women in law enforcement areas. So yeah, so there's quite
Yeah, I
a few
think a lot
areas.
of women judges.
Here's Debbie.
All right, around where do we see women still facing inequality around the world?
Is it echoing up there?
Yes, it is.
That's why I wasn't joining you.
You can't turn your mic off
You're down.
on your phone.
Inequality, Russia,
Russia,
North Korea,
yeah.
places like that.
Well, I don't know if we can say North Korea, because I just read an article yesterday where Kim Jong-un is, there's a report that he is in a coma right now because of his complications he's had with his heart. He has now fallen into a coma, and his sister has stepped up to take over the
Yeah,
leadership
that's
role
right.
in the
I
country.
heard that too.
Really?
So, yeah. So
How about the Muslim countries?
pretty much just about every Muslim country is still looked at as women as being superior or less
Right.
superior.
Second class
Second
citizen.
class citizens that are supposed to be home taking care of the
Yeah.
it's funny, I was watching Amy watches these shows all the time. It's like the 90-Day Fiancés and all that kind of stuff,
Oh,
and Married at First Sight. And I think it was a 90-Day Fiancé, but it was 90-Day Fiancé overseas, where women from the men from the United States find love over the internet in different countries with men and women in different countries. And this young woman was going to a Muslim country, and she's very vocal. And when she got to the Muslim country and was sitting down with this gentleman that she's been seeing online, having a relationship online with his parents, and they were sitting there telling her she needed to learn her place, and she's like, whoa, whoa, whoa.
Not happening.
right.
Exactly. So you still see it, like I said, in most of your Muslim countries.
Yeah.
Most of your Muslim countries are definitely, women should not be one of those where they should be very seen, not often, and never heard type things. They should only be seen in the households or shopping and doing that kind of stuff. So yeah, you see that quite a bit in most of your Muslim countries.
I think a lot of the different countries too, the parents still run the kids' life even when they're grown up.
Yeah.
You know, she's not acceptable,
Yeah. Yep. Yeah.
or
and
he's not
again,
acceptable.
again, in the 90-Day Fiancé, there's a woman who went to India to marry a young man in India, and the parents did not approve, and it was and they've kind of going through their struggles of how they can make their relationship work, even though his parents are not on board, and they're basically disowning the son because he's choosing to marry an American woman. So there's
Yeah.
you see a lot of, and because of the fact, like I said, American women are known to be a little bit more forefront.
Go, go.
They're we have rights, and
Which they
trying to-
fought for.
Yeah, that have been fought for and won, and rightly so. And I think when they're going there, they're afraid these American women are gonna come over to our country and start giving some bad ideas to our women, and we don't want that.
Yeah.
So,
But there are still dominating men in our country too.
oh yeah,
You know, I'm the boss and you do this and you
Yep.
do that.
yep, you see a lot of men, who, yeah, in our country still that struggle with that concept as well.
Yeah.
They believe that it's the right of the men to be the breadwinner and, you know,
White stay in the kitchen.
wife stays in the kitchen, cleans the house, does laundry, cooks the food, does all that stuff. And yeah, I would never, you know, I could tell you that I wear the pants in the house, but that's only because she tells me which ones to wear. So.
You're gonna be in trouble.
That's for the whole world to say no.
Yeah, exactly. Well, like I said, she tells me which pants to wear. So you
Sometimes
make
you're
the calls
lucky
to
she's
the-
not listening.
Yeah, she's probably not listening. She might be. I don't know. But you make the call as to how that goes out. I can tell you right now.
Oh, that's good.
That's a good one.
Confronting the news with scripture and hope, Pastor Eric. That's where you're at.
What's,
What'd you say?
Numbers.
Numbers
we're down at the,
27,
okay, we're down at
67,
the
yeah.
readings. Thank you. All right, the first reading that we have here is from Numbers 27, verses 6 through 7. And the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, the daughters of Zelophehad, sorry, I'm not going to address this, are right in what they are saying. You shall indeed let them possess an inheritance among their father's brothers and pass the inheritance of their father onto them. Zelophehad was an Israelite man who died in the wilderness, leaving no sons. His daughters were 5 young women who advocated for themselves to have the right to inherit property from their father. Moses brought the case before the Lord, and God ruled in their favor.
Yes.
We
question-
met them.
Yeah, the questions are, in what ways have sons been favored historically, and how are they sometimes favored today? What is the value of giving daughters equal standing in the home, church, and community? And where, if anywhere, do you find biblical support for equality between men and women? First one, in what ways have sons been favored historically, and how are they sometimes favored today?
Yeah. Don't you think that that's from the old school of bringing up?
Yeah,
I mean, it's not like the modern days, but their dads and their dads' dads.
Oh, the
they-
eldest son, blah, 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 and down.
yeah. And that's the way it was back in the Israelite days. This, the eldest son had full control. And he
And
got
there's-
2/3 of
and
all his father's
They're still like that
possessions were
today. You'll find some of those families where
Yeah.
the sons.
Yeah, you do see that, the oldest son, regardless of whether he's the oldest in the family or not, the
Yes.
oldest son is usually the
Yeah.
one that steps in and is, I guess the stuff is left to him to kind of either divvy up or do whatever
Yep.
with.
To disperse it, yeah.
Yeah, when the parents pass away. And it's, it's usually left to the oldest son, but today we don't do it, like I said, back in the Israelite days, back in Jesus' time, the oldest son got 2/3, where the second youngest son got the rest. So he got 1/3. So where today, you usually see the oldest son will usually be given the rights to do it, but they split it up equally amongst all the kids,
Sibling, yeah.
which is what they're supposed to. They're supposed to divvy it up amongst all the kids, but whether or not they do it equally or not, that's for them to I guess, figure out their job afterwards. But, both of our boys were adopted from China. And in China, the thought process is the sons take care of the parents. So therefore, they always wanted the sons. They didn't want the daughters. That's why there was, for many years, they used to basically murder their daughters
Right.
just so they could try to have a son, because they wanted to be taken care of when they retired. And they wanted, when the son got old enough, he would take care of his parents, which is something that we tell both our boys. We're still living, we're sticking with that tradition. But
Right.
you guys, I'm sorry, I must have not said that right. We're sticking with the tradition that they take care of us when they get old enough. Anyways, so that's why they always do, because that's what happens is when the son gets old enough to take care of the parents, and then he marries, her parents become second class citizens, basically. They are pushed to the back, a row behind his parents. So he'll take care of his parents first, and then her parents get whatever's left over. That's one of the reasons why they take and try to only have boys and not have the girls. They don't want to have girls, they want to have boys because they want to be taken. They want to be first. They want to be the front ones. They want their son will take care of them rather than be just pick up the scraps type deal.
And that's been going down from generation to
Yeah.
generation. to generation.
But what's happening in China is they're having a hard time finding young girls to marry their sons.
Say, let them
So-
all alone.
Yeah, because they've gotten rid of so many of their females that they don't have enough females there for their sons to marry. So they're struggling with that concept moving forward.
Yeah.
Wow.
Have they adopted a lot of the girls out, or they just
Well, at first they used to, like I said, they used to kill them.
kill them? Yeah, I remember.
But there
that.
was people or organizations that went over there to rescue these girls, and then they finally persuaded the people, the government and the people, to start these adoption centers and allow the girls to be adopted out
Instead of killing them. yeah.
instead of killing them. And so that's where they've gone with that. And like I said, and that's why, yeah, you see a lot of a lot of Asian Americans that are here because they've been adopted by a lot of Americans, which is something that we were told that when you go there, and they're gonna, oh wow, you're coming to take care of our kids, good, thank you, blah blah blah. We didn't get that treatment. We're towards the tail end of it apparently when we went over there. When they weren't looking too highly on Americans. And we got a bout of racism. What racism is like? Because we were not treated. We were treated very poorly. But I mean, the organizations and the adoption centers and stuff all were very, very grateful for us taking care of these children and taking these boys. Especially both of them were considered with disabilities.
Right.
Tux is a severe one, which I guarantee you, if they had seen a picture of him today, they would be shocked that he's even still alive and doing as well as he's doing.
Right.
Because they basically wrote him off as gone. So
Yeah.
they weren't giving him a fighting chance at all. So
Were you looking for boys to adopt, or you would take a girl to, or?
we actually, when we first started it, we put in for girl, a healthy girl.
Yeah.
Because like I said, we had our son Ryan, who had multiple disabilities, and after he passed away, I guess we had a greedy moment where we said, you know what, we dealt for 12 years of this child's life with a child with disabilities that we had to, he 100% of his care was he was depending on us for 100% of his care. And we're like, we would like to have a couple of healthy kids, and so that's when we started our process. And after 7 years of waiting, because apparently we weren't doing what God was wanting us to do, after 7 years of waiting, somebody made a comment to us about these child and waiting programs that they have. And so one day, Amy just said, she just got on just to look at it. And that's when she came across the picture of Grayson and said, that's my son. And she just knew we were to bring him home. So that's when we started the adoption process with that. And then after we brought him home, and we were blessed with, like I said, none of his diagnosis panned out. What they were telling us was wrong with him is not wrong with him. So we were blessed with a very healthy child by accepting the fact that we would be taking a child that wouldn't be healthy, that would going back into that role of being parents to a child who depended 100% on us. And then after that, we were like, you know what? And that's when Amy brought in, like I said, a picture of Tuck and said, and she had tears rolling down her face. And I just looked at the picture, looked at her, and said, when do we go? It's like, we just, like I said, then at that point we realized this is what God was preparing us for. God was preparing us to take care of these kinds of kids and stuff. So we chose to take on that role. Let's see, what's the next question? What is the value of giving daughters equal standing in the home, church, and community?
Well, you'd want your daughters to think that they are as good as a son.
Yeah.
So there isn't any preference anywhere.
I think God ruled in their favor.
Mm.
Well, it would give them more self-esteem.
Your daughters, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm seeing a lot. I'm not just from today with all the parents that I see and talk to. And a lot of times you get newly expected parents, and they don't know the gender of the child yet, and it's like they're all praying for girls. So it's like, and then when you see them get girls, usually the girls are spoiled.
Because they never raised teenage daughters. That's why.
That's what I would know that. But so you're kind of seeing a swing in our day to day of. I'm not saying they're putting the girls on top on pedestals, but yet you're seeing where they're giving a little bit better treatment, or maybe put up maybe a little higher than what the boys are, than what they're seeing. They're having more, they're holding more value than what boys are in a lot of ways these days. You're seeing young families and their quest for their
Having
child.
raised boys and girls, I'd rather raise boys any day.
That's what I remember when Amy and I first started dating, and her dad, every once in a while, when something was happening, he would just shake his head and should have had boys, he says.
But now my daughters are my best friends, so I mean, just
Yeah.
the teenage years were a little rough.
You're seeing a lot of, like I said, I'm seeing a lot of women in a lot of leadership roles these days, in all aspects of our social areas, our communities. You're seeing a lot of women in leadership roles.
Yeah, politics.
Yeah.
But look at Love in the Name of Christ.
Yeah.
Our director is a female, our store director is a female.
Yeah.
They have
Our chief
assistant.
of police of our police department.
Yeah,
is a female.
yeah.
So we're seeing a lot of, like I said, we're seeing women stepping up in a lot of leadership roles in our communities these days, a lot more than we've ever seen before. And to me, it's normal. I wouldn't think anything different. I'm not shocked when I have all of a sudden. The only time I was shocked is when I walked into a place and I was told I was going for a job interview at a company, and they told me that I would be meeting with Kim. And I'm thinking, oh, great, all right. Kim was a man, and that threw me off. That was the only time I was shocked. 'Cause I was expecting to meet with a female, but it's So it's like I said, I'm not shocked and offset by females being in leadership
No,
roles.
me either.
I've never been. It's never caught me off guard. It's expected. You're seeing a lot of it in the medical fields. I mean, I know Amy has been working a lot with the hospital and stuff. There's been a lot of hospitals that have a lot of females in leadership roles in the hospitals.
And my PA is a female.
Yeah. Yep. All right, and the last question on that one is, where, if anywhere, do you find biblical support for equality between men and women?
It must be somewhere in the Bible. I'm not sure where, but I know, that God loves each one of us. So,
Well, we had one here with the numbers that we read in verse 20, chapter 27, verses 67, where God is saying, nope, they get the same
Inherit,
portions as the boys would. That's what the boys would. We did see where, as it quoted in here, Mary and Martha, where Mary's sitting at the feet of Jesus, which is something that was very no-no for any female to do at that time. When you had a rabbi, the women were to stay out of the room, if could be, or stand back furthest away from the wall, and sitting at the rabbi's feet was supposed to be just the men, listening and taking words and hearing the teachings. So you see it there with that one, where he allowed Mary to sit at his feet to listen. Yes, Deb?
What about when God created Eve out of Adam's rib? He didn't tell Adam to put her down.
Yeah.
He made her to be his helper at his side, not
Equal.
below him, but at his side. And when you look at the first marriages in the Bible, it doesn't say, God tells the man to treat the woman as he would treat himself. You wouldn't treat your wife
Yeah.
underneath you or below you or worse than you would treat yourself.
those that, because Deb didn't turn on her mic, for those that didn't hear, Deb said Adam and Eve. Adam and Eve, when God took the rib from Adam, he didn't, he took the rib not to put the woman above him or below him, but to be beside him, to work alongside of him, to be equal to him. So yeah, exactly. That's another great one. Many people, they don't classify Mary Magdalene as a disciple, but yet she was. And in a lot of books and a lot of things that you read, Mary Magdalene was probably more of a disciple than any of the other disciples. Jesus confided in her a lot more than he did the rest of them. He told her a lot more things than he told the rest of them. So Jesus looked at her as probably the top disciple. And like I said, we see all the time Jesus sending women out to spread his message. When Jesus first came back, the first person he talked to was Mary Magdalene. And he sent her to go back and tell the other disciples. To tell the other disciples, not to tell the disciples. So like I said, Mary Magdalene right there is, like I said, we got women who are on equal grounds according to Jesus. So it's man that has put the ladder, one above the other. But like I said, when we look at Bible, at biblical, we're seeing an equal playing field. And Jesus, like I said, I think Jesus kind of, because during that time it was very, very much men here, women at home in the cleaning the house, cooking dinners, meals and stuff. But Jesus was saying, here we all are, and he made sure to keep everyone on equal playing ground when he taught his teachings. He gave everybody the chance to learn and hear Christ or hear God. All right, the second one, Judges 4:4-5. At that time, Deborah, a prophetess, wife of Lapidoth, was judging Israel. She used to sit under the palm of Deborah between Ramah and Bethel, in the hill country of Ephraim, and the Israelites came up to her for judgment. In response to the cries of the Israelites, God sent judges to lead the people. One was Deborah, described as a mother in Israel, Judges 5:7. A strong, courageous, and independent woman. Deborah was both a prophet and a judge, and an early indication that God calls both women and men to leadership. Prophets were both truth tellers and fortune tellers in the Bible. They could see the truth about problems in society and predict the consequences of those conditions. Although Deborah was a powerful judge and a prophet, she did not attempt to fight her battles alone. She summoned a military man named Barak and delivered God's command. Go. Take position at Mount Tabor, bringing 10,000 from the tribe of Naphtali and the tribe of Zebulun. I will draw out Sisera, the general of Jabin's army, to meet you by the weighty Kishon, with his chariots and his troops, and I will give him into your hand. Verse 4:6-7. What guidance can you gain from the leadership of Deborah, the prophet and judge? And why do you think she partnered with the military man Barak? And what does this teach you about shared leadership?
He had brains, he had brawn.
That's exactly what I'm sitting here thinking, and I'm waiting for somebody to say it.
I didn't
For
hear.
those who didn't hear, Deb said she had the brains, he had the brawn.
Good one, Deb.
She had the insight of God and could tell people God's word, but because she was a woman, she probably wasn't being heard by a lot of the men. So therefore, she had a very strong, powerful man who would stand alongside of her and share that role and be the brawn, be the enforcer of her words. And another one I was just thinking as I was reading
5
that.
minutes.
5 minutes. Another one as I was thinking that was Esther.
Mhm.
Esther was put into a role where, even though she was the queen, but yet as a queen we read where she was able to do a lot of things that the other queen couldn't do. She was allowed to do it because, and you know, a lot of people say it's because, you know, the king he favored it. He was in awe of her beauty, so he accepted her and let her get away with things more so than others. But in my opinion, it's God. God many times makes a way for us. And she had to be a leader and do something that would have possibly taken the life of any other female to step into the king's chambers at that time and say, listen, you can't do this to my people.
This is the way it's gonna be.
Yeah.
Listen up.
All right, we got 5 minutes. Let's do Matthew real quick. Matthew 15:28. Then Jesus answered her, Woman, great is your faith. Let it be done for you as you wish. And her daughter was healed instantly. Jesus went to the district of Tyre and Sidon and encountered a Canaanite woman who asked for his help, although he ignored her at first and then told her that he was sent only to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. She persisted. When he said, It is not fair to take the children's food and throw it to the dogs, she answered, Yes, Lord, yet even the dogs eat the crumbs that fall from the master's table. Her strong advocacy for herself and her daughter caused Jesus to praise her faith, heal her daughter, and perhaps even change the course of his ministry. At the end of the Gospel of Matthew, Jesus told his followers to make disciples of all nations, not just the lost sheep of Israel. The question, for what people in need are you willing to advocate today? How persistent are you in pursuit of justice and healing? And what does the Canaanite woman challenge you to do in the world today? So the first one, for what people in need are you willing to advocate for today?
The children, for the veterans.
Yep, both are, you need that. You need that advocacy because a lot of them, especially our children, their voices aren't heard. And a lot of times their voices aren't heard because they're looked at as still uneducated. So what they're saying is, you know, not worth listening to.
Listen to the children.
Yeah. You know, I'm reminded quite often, and I'm reminded by God because this thing comes at me quite a bit where Jesus says, let the little children come to me. And you would be wise to
Listen to
be
them.
like a child, to have the faith of a child.
Right.
Because just as the children depend upon the parents to survive, you too must depend on your father for survival. So, you know, that's what I said. So usually I'm always thinking about the children that are being the ones that are the most hurt. You know, as I gave them my message yesterday about Chicago and all the murders that are taking place, the record number of murders that have already taken place in Chicago, and how a huge portion of those murders are children under the age of 13. Just kids playing in the yard, sleeping in their bed, all of a sudden being hit with parades of bullets. And for nothing more than just being in the wrong place at the wrong time, or just existing. And it's
Yeah, the sad thing is it's growing out to other cities too, like New York had so many murders this weekend. And
yeah,
look at Grand Rapids.
exactly. That's what I said yesterday. All of our large cities are seeing these struggles. It's not just Chicago, and Chicago is one of the ones that I just, like I said, that I use because it had
Maybe the news, yeah.
It's the ones that you see a lot on the news. It's the ones when you type in Google search of our largest
Well,
cities
like they
struggles.
say, even in
and
Grand Rapids, it seems like there's a shooting every day.
yeah, yep. You're seeing a shooting just about every day in Grand Rapids and most of the areas.
Yeah.
Muskegon's the same way. Detroit was the same way. New York has gotten really bad over the last few years. Los Angeles has always been,
Yeah.
portions of Los Angeles have always been struggling. So it's, you're seeing Miami's another one. So a lot of our bigger cities are seeing these struggles more and more and more. And the kids are the ones being caught in the middle
Right.
of all of this uncivil rest that's happening.
Time's up.
Time is up. Wow, that took 5 minutes to make that look out. Well, all right. So that's it for the day. So how about we'll go ahead. Just so you guys know, if you want to become part of our cast, we do have a room on our display to bring up a couple more faces. If you'd like to join us for our home, Or if you'd like to come on in and join us here at Nuevo United Methodist Church to sit down and have the discussion face to face, you're more than welcome to do so as well. If so, if you want to, just go ahead and get a hold of us. You can look us up at nuevoumc.com and get our contact information so you can be part of our discussions as well. Let's go ahead and bow our heads and pray. Dear blessed, glorious, and holy Father, we want to thank you for this time, and we want to thank you for this day, in which you give us the opportunity to come together and talk about how you are still working in the world today, even with all the chaos that's amongst us. We want to thank you for giving us the wise decisions in our history to include more people into what you call the equality of all, as we are all made in your image. May we continue to listen to you and follow those guidelines, and to be there for each individual on this planet who you love and care for and cherish. It is in your glorious name we pray. Amen.
Okay, guys, we did it.